Okay, afternoon all. It's now 12:30 again, so welcome back for the next webinar. Unbelievably, the 9th webinar in the Business Agility series. Great to see lots of you on here at the moment. As usual, we'll just wait half a minute or so. Lots of people joining. Everyone seems to turn up sort of like just about on the dot. So the normal Kent weather report. Quite nice out there actually. It's a little bit cloudy, but nice and warm. About 20 degrees here in the south of the UK, which is very, very nice. Yeah, so I'll just wait a second. Lots more people coming on board. Okay, so we're about a minute in. So let's start with a few slides as usual. So I'll just go over to here. Let's just do a share screen. Over to the slides, into presentation mode, and off we go. So as I say, this is another Business Agility webinar, the 9th. If you want to see the previous webinars that I've done, they're all on the RadTac YouTube site. So just look for RadTac on the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see all 8. The first 7, I think it was specifically on leadership. Now we're looking at really interesting stuff like creativity, innovation, and indeed, this particular webinar is focused on creativity and innovation, and that's why I have my friend with me, Stuart Young, who's an expert in this area. So we'll do some introductions. In a minute. So innovation and creativity. That's what we're going to be looking at. So we've got an hour to have a look through this. Might take a little bit shorter, might take a little bit longer, but generally we around hit the hour. So innovation and creativity. So apologies to those of you who've been on webinars before. The first few minutes is just pretty standard, just some introductions. So yeah, Pete Measy is myself. RadTac is the company I formed in 1998. Obviously the company I work for now. I started in IT many years ago, 1983-ish. For the last 25 years or so, really been specializing in nowadays what's called agile and lean, Kanban thinking, all that sort of good stuff. Obviously, in that arena, innovation and creativity is absolutely core to business agility, as we'll see over the following hour. Certified in all sorts of things, certified Scrum trainer, agile project management, all sorts of Kanban practitioner, all sorts of different stuff that I won't bore you with. Used to be a director of what is now called the Agile Business Consortium, what used to be called the DSGM Consortium. Lead author and editor of the book Agile Foundations that you can see here on the slide, etc., etc. Used to be an adjunct professor. That's just a lecturer, by the way. That's not a real professor. That's a lecturer at Holt University. On Agile. So that's myself. If I can hand over to Stuart to introduce himself, that'd be awesome.
Hello. So I've just unmuted myself, so hopefully you might see me. I think if you just continue to see Pete's face, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, here I am. I've worked with RadTac for over 5 years now. But as it says on the screen there, I think of myself as a visual storyteller. So undoubtedly, if you've seen me around, the chances are you've seen me at a conference shackled to a drawing board, or maybe teaching or training somewhere around the world. So you're really very much an agile enthusiast and purist, but really passionate about all things innovation and creativity. In the context of business agility and product innovation in the business space, I'll go on to describe a lot of the benefits of visual thinking to help with generating ideas, finding a level of alignment, and really helping to accelerate learning and accelerate team collaboration, which is incredibly vital right now in this sort of lockdown period. Never before has it been more important to innovate in a distributed way. I head up our innovation practice as well, which if you've been to any of the webinars so far, you'll know that we really do not only embrace different methods, but also frameworks. So it's really focusing on that customer centricity and building the right thing as well as building the thing right. So all things design thinking, all things visual, all things innovation. That's me. Yeah, look forward to joining Pete and supporting him during this webinar.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Stuart. So let's push on. So so this is the 9th, the sort of stuff we're going to have a look through. Quick look through why business agility, which we've done on every webinar. If you want to understand more about why business agility, look at the earlier webinars. The first 1 or 2 webinars goes into that in a lot more detail. Why and when to innovate? Yes. Methods of agile design thinking, balancing discovery with delivery. Yeah, we can see what else is on here. So we're going to give a good old run through over an hour of the basics of innovation and creativity. There's our contact details down on the left hand side there if you want to get in contact with us. The next one, Wednesday, August the 5th, is on how to be an amazing Scrum Master. So why business agility? I'm sure most of you, or some of you at least, will have heard this term VUCA. People in the agile world talking about VUCA. And VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So in essence, if you believe that today's world is very, very VUCA, volatile, etc., then using more traditional approaches like waterfall, like rational unified process, approaches where you do a lot of analysis and design up front, they're not really suited to the modern world. It's the agile approaches where we work in much more iterative, incremental ways. So in other words, within agile, we have small increments of value. Agile is all about continuously delivering small increments of value. And because we have those small increments of value that we can either put live or put to a stakeholder group, the key thing is we can get feedback. So in other words, as we get feedback, we can stay in line with that VUCA world. So iterative, basically react to the feedback, evolve as we go forward, incremental, small increments of value that allow that iterative thinking. So if you believe it's a VUCA world, that's why we need to be using agile across the whole of our business. Now, certainly initially, agile was used mainly in information technology. I've been working in the agile world since 1994, and I would say the first probably 10 to 15 years of that interaction in agile was mainly in IT. But nowadays, as we've just said, in the VUCA world, the whole business needs to be agile. So readiness for the fourth industrial revolution. So I'm sure, again, many of you will have heard of this concept, the fourth industrial revolution. It's really moving into a world where everything is VUCA, you know, globalization, the use of robots, the use of artificial intelligence, all this sort of, all of this sort of good stuff. Yeah, the world is changing again very, very significantly. And interestingly, you know, in this COVID-19 nightmare, which you know is difficult for all of us, I think, it's actually accelerating this. It's accelerating the fourth industrial revolution. So if we look at, this is the World Economic Forum. By the way, there's a very good video that's available on the internet that you might be interested in. Just look for the World Economic Forum, fourth industrial revolution. It'll give you an awesome overview of what this actually is. But, you know, times they are changing. I personally, there's nothing wrong with traditional waterfall type approaches. You know, they're good approaches. However, I personally haven't used them for about 25 years because the environments I work in, business, etc. You know, I was the CEO of Radtac. I set Radtac up, so I've got a bit of experience in business. Radtac's a multi-million-pound international business now. Bit of experience in building businesses from startup to a pretty good size. Yeah, we need to be agile across the business, not just in IT. And the fourth industrial revolution will only make that faster. And the COVID-19 nightmare has made that even faster. The organizations that will get through this situation we're in now very healthily is the organizations who can react to change. Yeah, another interesting slide here from, once again, from the World Economic Forum. They were looking at the top 10 skills required in business. And in 2015, we can see that list there. And we can see creativity, number 10. 2020, interestingly, that's come up now to number 3. I would be surprised in the next few years if that wasn't number 1. Creativity, innovation is at the absolute heart of everything to do with business agility, the absolute heart. So let's push forward a bit. So I'm going to have a look at creativity, innovation. Is there a difference? Yeah, I suppose there is. But before I go into talking about this, once again, if we can just do a bit of interaction on chat, on Zoom, on chat. So if you set your chat to all attendees, so everybody can see what you're raising, could you just go into chat and could you start to think about what is creativity or well-known creatives? So if you can start to put into chat there what you think. So, you know, a definition of what you think creativity is, or well-known creatives. Apple, yeah, from Justin, thank you very much. So I would suggest, yeah, that's a good example of a creative organization, certainly. Let's see if we get any others. Microsoft and Brenda, yeah, absolutely. You know, interestingly, in that arena, in information technology type assets, Yeah, it's absolutely core for things like Apple and Microsoft. Creativity and beauty, finding novel solutions for a problem. Awesome definition. Awesome definition. Looks good to me. Almundina, the ability to think out of the box, definitely. Brenda again, Dyson, yeah, great example of in fact, that they actually brand and market themselves in innovation and creativity. That's a good one. Joshua, hi Joshua again. The ability to take information and display it in a new way, yeah, awesome. So that's a good example. Kareen, turning new and imaginative ideas into reality. Yeah, awesome. So that's maybe one of the differences between innovation and creativity. Perhaps innovation
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
taking
think
that.
that's a good
Yeah,
one. A good
yeah.
shout out for that. We'll look at that later on about the differences there. That really sings out of that. Absolutely.
You're awesome. Yeah, really, really good. Omar, finding a niche and being able to deliver that in the marketplace. Yeah, really great definitions here of creativity innovation. So, yeah, fantastic. Let's just kill that down and let's have a look. So, creativity. Let's just have a quick definition of what creativity is. The ability to produce or use original and unusual ideas. That's the Cambridge Dictionary definition. Yeah, sounds good to me. The ability to think out of the box. You know, sometimes in Radtech we talk about idea to creativity to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So have the idea, then think creatively, then actually innovate, which is basically make it happen. Yeah, bringing something new into existence. So good creatives, you know, good examples of creatives. Edison, yeah, good example of a creative, I think. Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci, Van Gogh. You know, very, very creative people. Come up with original and unusual ideas. So yeah, so one definition of creativity. We can see one definition of types of creativity, which I like. Aaron Dietrich, who's a professor of cognitive neuroscience. So yeah, so what he defines is 4 types of creativity. So let's just have a look at these. Deliberate and cognitive creativity. So in other words, this is someone who's got a lot of experience in the arena. They think about things in detail. They're very analytical. And they come up with you know, creative ideas. Edison, who I've mentioned before, probably a good example of somebody like this. Edison understood his area inside out, backwards and forwards, but came up with something very innovative within that within that arena. Deliberate and emotional creativity. So when Dietrich talks about this, these are the aha moments, deliberate result of deliberate emotional thinking. Yeah. Yes, interestingly, actually, that deliberate and emotional creativity, it's not something that I personally tend to use very much. And I was looking for examples, and all I can see anywhere is a definition of what it is, and I couldn't see any examples, which is interesting. But yeah, so I couldn't think of an example of somebody who follows that sort of approach, and doesn't look like anybody else can either. Spontaneous and cognitive creativity. So, you know, somebody who understands their area, but, you know, eureka, that sort of thing, eureka moment. So obviously Archimedes, eureka. Newton, you know, apple falling off a tree. Whether that's actually true or not is a different question, but that's the story about Newton. So yes, spontaneous and cognitive creativity, thinking about a subject area, and then something suddenly spontaneously causes a huge leap. And then spontaneous and emotional creativity, an epiphany. Yes. So Van Gogh, I think, would be a good example of that sort of creative thinking, having an epiphany, sorry, or Beethoven, yeah, or
I love
Bach.
the I love the fact as well, Pete, that a lot of this stuff you're talking about relates to, even in the Scrum guide, it will say that the definition of the Scrum framework is to kind of create, create the environments in which teams can address complex problems, as well as creatively and productively build awesome products, right? So creativity is really the essence of all this, and it touches on that spontaneous, approach, that the connections that teams must have whilst working, in those cross-functional teams. So I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, that's certainly my perception, and you know, my experience. Well, I think myself and Stuart's experience is totally alike. I know we've said this, but what we're talking about here in this 9th webinar is absolutely the core of what agility is about. You know, continuous delivery of value, but that value needs to be innovative and creative. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to operate in the VUCA world, and we certainly won't be able to interact successfully and be successful within the 4th Industrial Revolution. Definitely, if we're not innovative and creative. And by the way, I'm not necessarily thinking about innovation and creativity about specifically products. I'm thinking about innovation and creativity about how we deliver the products, or how we market the products, or how we shape our organization via HR, or anything in the business, you know, how we deliver our finance capability. It needs to be continuously innovative and creative. Business agility is the heart of everything we do in business agility.
On that note, there you were saying, Pete, about the emotional element to that cognitive, just touches on what you said there about the what being the product and the how being the team and how they do things. I suppose that really reflects on on a retrospective, and the use of visualization and creativity touches on that last thing, that kind of emotional creativity, using pictures as a way in which you can understand the how people are feeling, the connections, how we feel about this process. So yeah, anyway, resonates a lot with all that we teach and believe in.
Yeah, definitely my experience. And as I say, if we might be working in an arena where we're producing, I don't know, cans of beans every whenever. So, we're doing something that possibly with our product, we don't need to be particularly creative or innovative, but how we do that, we definitely need to be creative and innovative, and how we shape our business, etc. So yes, agile is broadly looking at two things: delivering value from products or outcomes on a continuous basis, but we're also looking at continuous improvement. Kaizen, change is good. Kaizen being a concept from lean, lean being one of the foundations of agile. So we talked there about creativity. Once again, over to you. A little bit of interaction again. What is innovation? So we talked about creativity. What is innovation or well-known innovators? Again, I'm just going to go into the share, if you'd be kind enough to put some ideas. So great innovators. What is innovation or examples of great innovators? What do you think? Elon Musk, awesome. Yeah, great innovator. So SpaceX, Tesla, all this sort of stuff. It's not like a Ford moment, or a Daimler moment coming up with something totally new. However, looking at the way he does it and looking at the improvements he made, great innovator. Make something real from an idea. Yeah. Steve Jobs, another great example of a creative innovator, somebody who's both creative and innovates. Omar, somebody mentioned James Dyson a bit earlier, but yes, I would suggest Dyson is a great example of a creative innovator, has creative ideas, but then also innovates the way he does things.
And connection with Steve Jobs as well. And one of the slides that Pete showed around Da Vinci and the simplest sophistication is the art of sophistication is simplicity, and that's exactly what Steve Jobs has managed to do. Whenever he pitches any product, he really focuses on simplicity, and that's a really innovative approach.
Sorry, absolutely. Funnily enough, I was watching something on Jobs yesterday, and he was actually talking about exactly what Stuart just suggested. And he started from the interaction with the customer. He didn't start from the technology, so he was always thinking about how to make the customer experience better. So a great one from Justin. Love this one, the Fosby flop. Brilliant. Yeah, very innovative. So a better way to jump over a high jump. Yeah, Fosby flop's a great example of innovation. Branson. Judy's mentioned Branson. Yeah, I think Branson again is a great example of a creative innovator. So once again, awesome stuff on the chat. Great stuff. So innovation. I won't read out what's just on the slide. You can see the slide here. But the key point for me here is the second point, really. There is no innovation without creativity. And also the key metric in both creativity and innovation is value creation. It's all about creating value. Now, whether that's value in how we do things in the business, whether that's value in how our senior leadership team work more effectively, whether that's value in the products and outcomes that we're aiming for, whatever. But creativity and innovation is all about creating value, and idea to creativity to innovation. It's a cyclical iterative cycle. Is that English? But that's what it is. So you mentioned some of these. So the implementation of an idea into something with value. So they're not coming up with something which is totally left field, but they are coming up with something which totally takes the market over. So Reed Hastings, Netflix CEO, for example, on-demand video, etc., etc. Well, arguably that one is creative as well, but certainly the way he's gone about delivering that with Netflix, as opposed to Amazon Prime and all this sort of thing. Yeah, very, 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 very innovative. Sherry Sandberg, Facebook COO, Chief Operating Officer. Yeah. So the way Facebook works, again, extremely innovative. They're always evolving what they do. Jan Koum, WhatsApp. WhatsApp has sort of taken over the world, CEO, and then Elon Musk, one of the people you mentioned a little bit earlier. So really good examples there, I think, of innovators, and interestingly, very similar to what you came up. Good definition here again of innovation. Creativity is the ability to produce new and unique ideas. Yes, as we said. Innovation is the implementation of that creativity. That's the introduction of a new idea, solution, process, or product. Yeah, that resonates with me. idea to creativity to innovation. So
Mhm.
yeah, great stuff. Yeah, the sorts of things we might do. Again, we've only got an hour, so this is a bit of an oversimplification. But the sort of thing we would do: creativity, problem solving, divergent thinking, which Stuart's going to go through for us, exploratory behaviour, exploring stuff. Blue sky workshops, this sort of thing, blue sky envisioning, this sort of thing. Innovation, gathering support for a particularly creative idea, obtaining the resources to enable it to become real, convincing and persevering. Certainly that second point, persevere there. Um, if there's one thing I've learned over my business career of whatever it is, 23 years, 24 years, if you don't give up, you can never fail. So, the one thing I would suggest is at the core of any successful business is we never give up. We constantly evolve and we're constantly iterating. There will be problems. We never give up. Perseverance. So yeah, definitely innovation, convincing and persevering, and exploitation behavior. Obviously, we don't mean that by exploiting other human beings. We mean exploitation of the idea. So thinking about how we can get that fantastic idea out to people and help people. So yeah, nice. Some nice ideas there about creativity and innovation. Great creative innovators. I think you've mentioned all of these. You mentioned two of these certainly. Steve Jobs. He's one of his famous sayings is creativity is just connecting things.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Richard Branson within Virgin have a concept called ABCD, and that stands for always be connecting the dots. So they're broadly saying the same thing. Webb Smith, birth of storyboarding. Yeah, Stuart understands this area far better than I do, but yeah, another good example of somebody who's
Well, I
creative.
mean,
Also
on that note, Pete, yeah, Webb Smith again joining the dots, and we had a good chat, me and Pete. We often have these good chats about sort of storyboarding, and the birth of children's books kind of dates back to the 1600s. But we were having a chat about this, and storyboarding actually was sort of credited to Webb Smith back in 1930. So not really, a lot more modern, but the idea of it, and this should resonate with everyone on this call. It was that it was a case of just storyboarding an animation and a way of validating design ideas before investing in costly development. So this is a great, one of the things that we'll be talking about here is innovation. Not only creativity and innovation is fun, it's a good thing to do, but it helps with survival. It helps with reducing costs. It's just a very powerful way of aligning things and joining the dots, a dot-to-dot puzzle, a storyboard. So there you go.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the, in fact, probably the first large business transformation I ever got involved in, which was 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was, at a major international airline. What we were doing there is we were putting storyboards around the walls. In essence, rather than writing hundreds or thousand-page documents to explain to people this is how we're changing our engineering capability in airline X, we had pictures around the walls. I suppose it's fine. It's British Airways. This was back in the day, 25, 30 years ago. People like me then walked people through the storyboard, and people were saying that it was far easier for them to understand what the changes within British Airways engineering were going to be 25, 30 years ago, because it was storyboarded. And then what we could do is we would take down, questions people had on the storyboard, put them back, and it just made the communication for that very significant business transformation. It made the communication so much easier, and it allowed us to connect all the dots.
Yeah.
We stopped smokestacking within the, well, I wouldn't say we stopped smokestacking, but we certainly reduced it significantly. People were starting to think about the value chain of engineering rather than just what my area of BA engineering does. So yes, awesome stuff. Storyboarding, awesome stuff. So why innovate? So again, over to you. Nice and interactive, hopefully. What do you think are the main drivers of innovation? Oh, no, spelled innovation wrong there. But anyway, what do you think are the main drivers of innovation? So once again, onto chat, if you would. So you've come up with some awesome stuff up to now. Let's see what else we come up with. So what do you think are the main drivers of innovation? Why do businesses need to innovate? Progression, certainly, Luce. Thanks very much. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
John, competition. Yeah, definitely, because we can be damn sure in the fourth industrial revolution, everybody else is going to be innovative and creative. Brenda, a problem to solve. Definitely. Competition from others, from Justin in the same market. Definitely. Judy, blockers, needing to overcome blockers. Yeah, these are all great examples of where we need innovative thinking. Blockers yet needing to opportunity. Judy's come up with there. Yeah. Oh, there's an interesting one from Craig. Good to see you again, Craig. Sustainability. I would absolutely agree with that. You know, we're not going to have a sustainable business unless it's creative and innovative.
That's
Dina, hi Dina. So to be ahead of others, fantastic. Sorry, Stuart, you're going to say something?
no, just that's the missing bit Craig says there. We talk about viability, feasibility, and desirability, and the missing element to that is sustainability. You know, we don't just innovate once. You know, then therefore you're never going to continuously survive. So yeah, sustainability is key.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Mike, good to see you again. Surviving the VUCA world. Justin, good to see you again. Keeping up with the times' latest tech. Yeah, awesome. So again, once again, you know, great comments here on chat. So okay, so these are actually slides that Stuart was at. This was the Business Agility Conference in 2020. New York, Stuart, was it New York?
It was, and ironically, I was hosting it, and this is exactly when it was just before the pandemic. I was actually on the stage when I was hollered off to tell everyone that we're now facing a pandemic. So it was a very disruptive time, let me say. So and a fitting time for some of the stuff that we'll be talking about. But yeah, it was back in March in New York.
So awesome, thank you. So it's an interesting one. This was one of the things that one of the presenters, Sally Alata, was talking about. She was saying it takes a crisis to obtain the right mindset for change. Yes, certainly. I mean, if there is a crisis, then that's going to change. That's going to create the right mindset, and we're seeing that with COVID-19, and we're seeing how that is speeding up the fourth industrial revolution. You know, people becoming much more aware of virtual working. And all that sort of good stuff. So yes, if you have a crisis, that will drive the mindset for change. However, the agile view is really yes, you know, agree with that. However, agile is about continuous improvement, continuous evolution of the capability. So we don't only change in crises. We need to make sure in business agility that the way we set the business up is it's continuously innovating, it's continuously creative on everything, the processes, the products, the outcome, everything. And it's via following that approach that innovation and creativity becomes at the heart of how we do everything. So yes, crises will drive change. However, continuous improvement and the ethos of change in our heads is an absolutely core element of the way agile works. We're continuously changing, not just in crisis situations.
And I think just resonating with what Pete said there, and the talk by Sally just sort of, I think it totally echoes what Pete's saying there, in that her story was really around it. Her talk was on how to leverage our own transformation skills to rebuild nations. And obviously the heart-provoking thing was that it's based on the history of Sudan and her father, who escaped execution and led and helped shape an anti-government movement. But I think exactly what Pete says there, it's that sometimes the mindset of a crisis allows us to sort of think about how we can innovate. And absolutely, as Pete says, it's that continuous innovation and that desire and that crave for continuous innovation that will allow us to continuously survive and be sustainable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, be prepared. Be prepared for a crisis. Some of you might have heard of Peter Crone. He specialises in sort of human potential and performance. Very interesting guy. This is the Nightingale Hospital we're seeing in the background here, just thinking about our COVID-19 nightmare. And that didn't take long to build at all. Very, very innovative way of delivery. So yeah, calm seas do not make a great sailor. Now this one resonates with me because I am a sailor. And yes, you know, if you're sailing along singing a song, if you've got calm seas, great. But what makes you a great sailor, well, I wouldn't say I'm a great sailor, but what does make you a great sailor is if you've also been out in a force 8 when the tide's going the wrong way, you've got wind against tide, you're rounding flamber ahead, and yeah, it's those situations, it's experience of that and how you can innovatively get yourself out of those situations. So, you know, the agile mindset, business agility, is about making sure that our business has the skill, the experience, and the flexibility to pivot very quickly. So when a strong wind against tide suddenly hits you out of nowhere, which it should never do, but let's say it does, yeah, you need to be able to innovate yourself out of that situation. So calm seas do not make a great sailor. Yeah. The Fuji story. I'm sure some of you have heard the Fuji story. I've put a URL here if any of you are interested in having a look at this. It's a very interesting one. There's loads of examples of this, by the way. But from film to makeup. So about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. Oh, by the way, this particular thing, the website link there links to a presentation from 2013. But about 10 years ago, Fujifilm were having difficulties. The world was changing very, very quickly. And somebody very innovatively and creatively said, well, hold on a minute, the antioxidants that we use to make sure the film doesn't degrade, that's very similar to the antioxidants that are used in makeup. So there's sort of like a sort of synergy there. And also, when we're thinking about film, we're actually thinking to make sure that the skin tones are correct. We're making sure that the film reflects the skin tone, etc., that we want reflected. Well, hold on a minute. Doesn't that give us experience in makeup? Isn't it the sort of thing, different shading, that sort of stuff? Yeah. So very, very innovative. They started moving into this environment, and they're doing very, very successfully in it as well in this makeup environment. So no great surprise. Fuji, at the core of how they think is Kaizen. Kaizen, concept from Lean, I mentioned a little bit earlier. Kaizen literally means change is good. So a great example of a very business agile organization, and the fact that they had to change direction to survive. And I'm sure Fuji will survive into the future because they've got the ability to do that.
Going back to that, Pete, just going back to that one there, which is great. The Fuji story is such a powerful one. It's so nice. And that's a really good example of disruptive innovation, right? It's a really, really good example of how, on the last webinar, me and Pete, we were running, we talked a lot about the business model canvas and the work of Alex Osterwelder and Strategize. So yeah. I'm sure a lot of you here are familiar with business model canvas and the value proposition canvas. But nonetheless, it's a really good example of, from a feasibility perspective, an organization has made use of of their capabilities, disrupted their existing business model to then thrive in a new world. And I know it feels so sorry for Kodak and everyone gives them a good old ribbing, but Fujifilm is a good example. Both faced exactly the same circumstance, but one pivoted. But that's a really good example of sustainability and growth based on their own capabilities. Really nice example.
Superb. And we see, organizations, Amazon, Branson's group of companies, they're always innovative and pivoting and changing direction. In fact, some of you, if not all of you, know Nokia used to produce Wellington boots and tractor tires before they actually got into mobile phones. So
I never knew that until you told me. That's brilliant.
Yeah, very, very innovative, very innovative, creative companies. So this is Niels Flagging. I'm sure I've said that name wrong, but this is a nice statement. From idea to innovation takes creativity. From idea to innovation takes creativity, and creativity is in the hands of your teams. Niels is really a specialist in leadership. He's written quite a few books. Probably his most famous book, and the one that I really like, is called Organizing for Complexity. That's got some really interesting ideas in it about how we can organize. It's not specifically about agile per se, but it thinks about holacracy and thinks about flat structures and all that sort of good stuff. So it's certainly worth having a look at that. Awesome. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Stuart to go into more detail about design thinking and all that sort of good stuff. So over to you, Stuart.
Thank you very much. So it's on that note, it's Niels is very inspiring. I can't share at the moment, but I'm sure on my.
Oh, sorry, that's because I'm still sharing. Don't.
No problem. There you go. I'm being disruptive right here, or what But yeah, Niels, we talk about that flat organisation and that holacracy, and I think that's really key to everything that we were saying before, myself and Pete, in that it really does. Innovation doesn't just start in one area of the organisation. It sort of happens throughout the organisation, and it needs to start with the team. So really, really important stuff there. So yeah, here we are talking about agile design thinking. So again, we are passionate about being method and framework non-biased. In the agile space, in the design thinking space, we have to be pragmatic. We have to disrupt our own business model at RadTac in order to survive, and that's why we're really passionate about this stuff. Hot off the press, I don't know if anyone's. Pete's. I think he'd checked this out as well as I did, but this was online. I think it came through from Alex Osterwelder. Shared it, and it came originally from John. I can't say his surname there. Richmond. But nonetheless, it's a really interesting little bit of insight here about R&D, right? R&D, research and development, which essentially is innovation, right? And that is how much money Amazon are investing in research and development. And another thought leader at RadTac, Mark Munich, we were running a webinar quite a few weeks, probably about 2 months ago now, at the beginning of lockdown. And Mark was very passionate about the fact that you need not only to be resilient, it's like Pete said, actually, totally agreeing with Pete. We can't just wait for a crisis. We have to invest in it. We have to invest in innovation. We've got to continuously have that mindset. And I think this goes without saying here. And Werner Vogel's words here, we need a culture and an organization that allows us to move really fast. And my translation of that is that continuous innovation is key to not only growth, but survival. So, you want to be ahead of the game, you want to be ahead of the curve. That's great, but it will allow you to survive. And I think that's really important. So I threw that in here just now because I wanted to mention that and just do a little drawing really, which touches on this. So something that, again, the Strategize and different people, and something we'll definitely talk about at RadTac is the impact versus investment. Just making sure I look up that you can see this. Investment of innovation, right? So the old school waterfall way would be we just do stuff, right? We don't necessarily know. We maybe innovate once and that's it. And then we've got time, right? The time in which it takes to go really from discovery to delivery, to actually delivering something. And there's going to be, when we think about from an innovation perspective, there's going to be this sort of a pattern, right? We do need to spend a considerable amount of our time in innovation and innovating things, and through time we will start making more of an impact. The only problem with this visual is it looks very linear. It's suggesting that we do it once up front and then we don't move forward. So this is, again, something that myself and Pete have been talking about a lot, and it's really where a lot of our thoughts are right now at RadTac, talking about the evolution of a product. And as Pete said, it's seeing past the product. It's seeing more about the experience, which is exactly what Steve Jobs does. He sees past that. And if you look at any of his older videos when he's promoting something, he's not talking about the product. So there's much more to it.
Yeah.
All
about customer experience for Jobs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I tend not to breathe, so Pete just needs to holler when he wants to speak. I'll take breath. We're both quite enthusiastic. You may have noticed. So we've got discovery here. So this is your typical design thinking, and then we've got delivery. And like I say, the traditional double diamond that we talked about before, it looks very dangerously like waterfall, and it shouldn't be seen as that. It needs to be a continuous loop of innovation, and that's really what we're showing you here with our avocados, if you like, where we're showing levels of divergent and convergent thinking, which happens within design thinking. But we know that it's not a linear approach, it's continuous. So it's like the DevOps, any of you here that are really passionate about DevOps, any of that mentality for that striving for continuous improvement, and exactly what Amazon are doing. They're disrupting their existing business models. They're one example that have disrupted their business model umpteenth times. Amazon has changed and shaped no end of times. So this is what we're really talking about. And the heart of innovation, you could say traditionally sits on the left. But as we start designing stuff and building stuff and throwing things out there, innovation really sits significantly on the right-hand side. And I mentioned before that a gentleman called Cheesy, who sits in the XP space, once said, the fault with design thinking is if it only remains as post-its and people being kind of creative in a room and then innovating something without actually shipping it out or learning from customers' behaviors, we'll never really learn from it. So design ideas and test is really key. So I'll talk a little bit more about this. One thing that's really important that is at the heart.
Can I just add something very quickly to that, Stuart, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah,
just real quickly. So product and outcome DNA, yeah, definitely. This is about doing products. But we could put process DNA in the middle there. We could put organizational DNA. We can put anything in the business there. So it's about the DNA of how we shape and run the business. This particular thing's looking at products. It could be anything in the middle there. Processes, anything. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and this is the Pete loves the beautiful analogies to really help us with sort of understanding and making this stuff tangible. And I like the word I quite like using right now is a metamorphic state. So you like that? The metamorphic state. So the sources we've talked about the sources of heat and pressure, right? That could be disruption. That could be your competitors, the market rhythms, the trends. Now, all these things continuously evolve and change. Do we need to invest more in discovery or delivery? What are we learning? But as Pete said, absolutely. And where my mind is right now, or our mind, might I say, is these are the key elements of the DNA that these will evolve. These are in a metamorphic state, which will continuously change. But we need to have our head on the ball. We need, as far as innovation comes, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the IDEO model, model of design thinking. They'll be familiar with this Venn diagram of desirability, viability, and feasibility. And in the middle there, we squeeze innovation. Well, no, where we squeeze in the middle there is product ownership and product management. That's what sits in the middle there. And at any time, you could look at this middle sphere, if you like, that, as Pete said, lots of things could go in here. And the product owner or product management's mindset needs to be right in the middle there, focusing on all these things. We've got whole product thinking there. Now, this is something that, again, if any of you have been on any of Pete's talks or webinars over the years, he's only the same age as me, by the way. He makes himself sound old, but
I've got very old young.
It's all the the boats that he's been, it's all the coal, all the sea air, But a lot of the principles that Pete talks a lot about Geoffrey Moore crossing the chasm, really resonates with this whole product thinking. Now, whole product thinking, this idea, it's sort of exactly the same. It's sort of how can we satisfy both sort of the early and the late majority? How can we continuously change our products and our sort of business models to ensure that we're going to survive? We're going to survive and grow. And this is really, to me, this is really, really important stuff. And I think that when we think about Steve Jobs, he talks past the product, and he sees past that, and he starts thinking more about the experience. And if you're familiar with the whole product thinking, you go past the generic product to the expected product, which is at the minimum, purchase conditions that people will have. Then you've got the augmented, which goes beyond, and then potential. So it's this evolutionary approach to the product mindset. So we constantly look at that. Then at the bottom there, working software over comprehensive documentation. But as Pete said, lots of stuff can go in here, but we will have to think about our product vision. We will have artifacts, we'll have roadmaps, we might have storyboards, we might have story maps. We'll have our own way of, our own artifacts that will assist us to drive this forward, including product strategy. And then we'll have our ways of working. As we go from left to right, we need to bake in lots of different methods, not just agile, not just design thinking, systems thinking, complexity thinking, etc. And then some of those outputs, outcomes, outputs, like Pete was saying in the last webinar, talking about the work of Roman Pichler as well, the outputs being the feature capabilities, the outcomes being that future, the needs, the motivations of our end users, and the value. You might have said, well, hang on, if we've done these two things, do we really need to talk about value? Well, of course we do, because remember, we're looking at the viability, feasibility, and desirability of our end users. Value is not just about customer satisfaction. Value is in, making profit. It's about risk reduction, opportunity enablement. As all of you know right here, all of this stuff is really key. So we need to have our stuff. So as Pete said, we're being very open and transparent here. If you come and see a webinar with me and Pete in the future, this slide may have changed. You know, it's an evolutionary approach, but I know, I haven't mentioned that word yet, but I know Pete's going to love that, metamorphic state. You can have that one,
Yes.
Pete.
I've been in a metamorphic state for years.
Yeah, there you go. And that Rob Hill was talking to me about that. So Rob, kudos to Rob for that term. There you go. So evolutionary design and validation. Back to you, thank goodness. Bit of space for you guys to talk. So what innovation tools and techniques have you used, and what do you like? So please, away you go. Get back to chat. What are you using? And please feel safe to share any ideas, and don't just be hung up on things that you've heard of in design thinking or agile. Some things that I used back in social care days, teaching, different industries. What things do you use? Innovation is not just for the business space. So what innovation tools and techniques have you used, and which ones do you like? Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Judy. If any of you, I don't know, there you go. Thank you, Lou. So Lego is fantastic. Thinking about service design, actually, so moving away from the agile space, although they all blend, there's something called a desktop walkthrough. So Judy or Louis, I don't know, Louis, I don't know if you've ever heard of desktop walkthrough. I know that people use Lego for strategic play and different things as well. But you know, I'm a visualist. I love visually drawing, and I can draw out a customer journey. But the flaw to that is that you think you know what the customer moments of truth are, but unless you actually simulate the play and the interactions, you suddenly go, "Oops, there's a problem." Lego desktop walkthrough is a great way for service design. Okay, there we go. Well, Lego's loved. Lego's loved. Yeah, absolutely. This is it, right? Thank you, Brenda. Innovate. This is the thing about diversity of thought. You know, we most of the time agree, me and Pete, most of the time. But that's what's wonderful about teams. And we talk about, you know, 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's really down to trust, and then conflict, and then creativity. And you need to be able to have those discussions, and we need that Zoom breakouts, the opportunity, the space for innovation. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, liberating structures. There's a really nice app that I recently got, a little takeaway here. Lisa, liberating structures. And it's got all of the different, there we go. There it is. Liberating structures, really nice one. If anyone's doesn't know about liberating structures, just get out there and have a look. Really simple stuff, but very much like the mindset of game storming, in understanding a space in which we can generate ideas together, create a level of cohesion. Design sprints, beautiful. I mentioned that an exercise in a second from design sprints. Really, really powerful stuff. Yeah, Miro and Mural, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, a lot of this stuff we need to pivot. A lot of the stuff you're looking at there is online. An interesting pivot there. A lot of you mentioned Lego, and then you naturally evolved into talking about digital tools. Someone was saying, you know, can you use Lego online virtually? Well, you probably can, but it might not work as well. So we do need to pivot to other approaches for kinesthetic learning and exercises. But thank you so much. So again, this is something that we've been talking about before. You know, this is that IDEO model again. Desirability, viability, and feasibility that we talked about in the last webinar. But as was mentioned in chat from you guys, so, you know, this is as much about your input here, sustainability. And whether you're a lover or hater of SAFE, there's different frameworks available, scaled frameworks available. Luke Homan of Innovation Games created one of the most wonderful modules to the SAFE framework, to the Agile project management syllabus. And he really does talk about sustainability. And I would say, really look into the APM from SAFE on that. It's all of the work of Luke Homan in one course, and it's remarkable. It really is. So, and this is another thing that Luke talks about. This is proof that we need to continuously innovate. So market research will drive product strategy, and from vision to vision to roadmap is your product strategy. Continuously changing customer needs, continuously changing features, all those things that are the product DNA, the heart of what we do, that will drive our strategy. That's based on rhythms, trends, etc. And then user research will drive product design. So there's innovation is happening all the time. A bit of jargon here, but again, SAFE will use Horizon 1 is in innovating the stuff that we have now, and then Horizon 3, innovating the things that are sort of going to come up. That when we go back to that whole product thinking, it's the things that are augmented, the things that are potential in the future. So we need to continuously do this. And the key to this is not to have an innovation department, right? This happens within your teams. This happens across the business. So here we are. So this is an example of what you would expect if you go on any of our courses at RadTac. Now, this is one example of many, and we're just going to take you through 4 what we call modules, theories, templates, techniques that you could use that go across this product sort of life cycle. From lean startup to how might we's, which is design sprints, visual thinking, hello, you know me, and impact mapping. Now, you are absolutely right. If you look at these and go, why have you put them there? Couldn't that be somewhere else? Yes, it could. All of these modules here could be used anywhere. But remember, there is no one silver bullet, and there's different times that we can use these things. They are tools. Don't think of any innovation tool as a checklist, but tools in your product management toolbox. Tools in your toolbox. You take them out at different times. My toolbox is pretty rough, so you don't want to look at my toolbox at home, but this stuff is unique. So let's start with lean startup. Why have I put it there? That seems, would it not be better in the right-hand side or somewhere after define if we were thinking about sort of discover, define a problem, develop, and then deliver. Yeah, it could be. It could sit over here, but then again, maybe we need to have a level of understanding. So from an Eric Ries point of view, there's 2 different MVPs. Let's just get some clarity first. The first touches much more on your workflow of an MVP, a version of a new product which allows the team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers. Sorry, forgive me. That's the one that relates to what Eric Ries says. The first one here is the Eric Ries one. The second one, which I'll just quickly talk about, is the sort of typical MVP, small amount of features that can be delivered and yield a product or increment of a product. So, that is the minimum that you can deliver in order to get fast feedback and also sort of and drive forward with your product and continue to build on that. The first one, so there we go, failure bow, a version of a new product which allows the team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. So I give you Amazon, an example that Eric Ries uses. I'll put a button on a website saying buy books here, and let's see if anyone gets any. Again, showing full transparency. This is something that Pete thought of on our RadTac website. One of a hypothesis for us was that people would want an assessment, a business agility assessment. Would they buy it? Should we invest time in it? Remember the visual that I showed you around impact and investment. Well, no, what we'll do is we'll use SurveyMonkey, and we'll create a button that will have the assessment. We'll find out how many people will be interested. I think a lot of people, and now we've got a pretty fully functioning tool, right?
Yeah, but we didn't sort of like spend a lot of time looking at that without that knowledge. We didn't want to spend a lot of time delivering it and then find out nobody was interested. That's
cool, because we all have our own cognitive bias, right? We all have our own bias, and we assume we know what will happen. We have to be customer driven. So so you could think, from an Eric Ries point of view, developing a prototype or a product could sit here. Yeah. Oh, not a good sign. But then at the same time, it's actually better to think about having it here from a case of ethnographic research. We need to discover more about our customers and learn from our customers. So an Eric Ries lean startup approach would work really well there. So it's diverse. How might we? Thank you. I think it was Judy. Thank you. You mentioned the how might we's. How might we's is a tool used in design sprints. And the how might we's, wonderful place between discovery and define, because this is where we're thinking about, suggestions. We're thinking, we're slightly synthesizing on some ideas. Every problem is an opportunity for design, right? I love that. By framing your challenge as a how might we question, you'll set yourself up for an innovative solution. This is not a suggested solution. This is we've mapped the customer journey. We've looked at the service blueprint. We've identified from a systems thinking approach the issues and constraints and bottlenecks in the feasibility, viability, or desirability, the flow of value, all of the stuff that Pete will probably be talking a lot about in the Scrum next webinar, about really trying to and understand how we can improve the flow of value across the system. Now, all those things, this is not saying this is what we're going to do. This is saying, holy shamoly, that there is the problem. Let's shove a how might we there. We'll dot vote that, and then we'll move forward. So very powerful stuff, and this is what we need to do. And Pete's got a lot of experience working with the C-suite and doing a lot of this stuff with leadership and getting them to map out their processes and their transformations and getting them to map out their how might we's, then getting them to dot vote that, and that becomes the action point for change. Really powerful. And visual thinking. Again, visual thinking, if you've been to any of my talks, etc., visual thinking for me, it really, we're talking about visual literacy. It's about how do we navigate information before we learn to read and write. I can get very passionate about this stuff, and I'd even go as far as saying that, that we as teachers, trainers, coaches, leaders, we need to embrace different people's learning styles. And a lot of people will have different, could have different requirements with learning, and pictures is really, really powerful. But pictures will create a level of alignment, a level of cohesion, accelerate learning, accelerate innovation. As it says here, 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. This is how me and Pete think. We draw pictures with each other. Yep. This is the essence of everything that we do. This is the powerful stuff. So, and this can happen at any stage, any time, with anyone. And I think what I'd like to do is get that across here. I don't think that you guys will be able to share, unfortunately. But what we'll do a little exercise. You might not have pen and paper, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do this. So this is talking about diversity of thought and convergence. And I want to get this across with a quick example. What I'm going to do is get you to draw. You won't be able to share, but you can just write in chat what you draw, okay? So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to draw, and how are we doing for time, Pete? We're all right?
2 minutes left, 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Of the whole talk?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then in which case, I will say, I would ask you to draw agile. And if you were to draw agile, you would, can you, let's continue. We might be slightly over. If you were to draw agile, what would you draw? If you could, fingers on buzzers, if you could put that into chat. Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for playing the game. You can see that I'm against time.
Yeah, awesome, yeah.
A circle. I just want to make sure, this won't work unless somebody adds one more thing. Anything at all. Brilliant. Mobius loop, Joshua. There you go.
Right, yeah. Mobius loop, fantastic.
Yeah. Stuff with Gabriel Benefit. Brilliant. Right, okay, thank you so much. These are all so different because they're different because Agile is actually an idea graph. So if you were to draw it, it would be a picture that represents an idea or concept. So that's what we're doing. What you've all done there is explain something very different. I'm sorry that we haven't got the chance to draw it, and see your pictures. But this is exactly the point, right? If we draw and we use idea graphs, we have diverse ideas. So we can get a level of divergence with drawing. So keep that, on your, be aware of that. And we can get a level of convergence through graphic metaphors and templates. A reminder here, remember, just a little reminder. Idea to innovation takes creativity, and creativity is in the hands of your teams. Bake in time for innovation, right? Final few slides here. This one here, nothing new to you. If you want a level of convergence, convergent thinking, so everything you talk about in design thinking, if you want a level of convergence, graphic metaphors are a great way to get people aligned, as are templates. Get everyone on the same page. Good old sailboat there. What's pushing us forward and what's holding us back? So these are great ways to get an organization to innovate, or a team, and everyone can innovate. Everyone. It's not exclusive. I will there take a deep breath and pass over. Here's some examples of templates. So they're not new to you. We converge on a template here, value proposition canvas and the business model canvas. All frameworks to get people to be diverse in their thinking, but converge.
I'll have a look at webinar 8 if you're interested in those. We looked at those in webinar 8. To those.
There you go. And then the final one here, is impact mapping. And we put impact mapping at the end there, because I think a lot of people forget that they think innovation starts at the beginning, but actually you can't innovate unless really drive based on your innovation based on customer experiences. So your customers, the current customer behaviors, who they are, how they're reacting or working or behaving with your products and features. That will then drive future features. So innovation happens throughout the two loops there, from left to right. Innovation happens all the time. Okay, and there we have it. So thank you very much. I'll pass you back to Pete.
Awesome. Great stuff. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much for that. So I'll just share screen. So just to go into the final few things. Just bear with me. I'll just go through these here. So we had a really good overview there of innovation and creativity, and yeah, the key point, it occurs all the way through, and the other key point, it applies across the whole of business agility. This isn't just for IT stuff or marketing stuff or HR stuff. So we can evolve products, but we can also evolve the processes, the way we do things, continuous improvement. So business agility, innovation and creativity. Yep, RadTac service portfolio. Yep, some of you have seen this before. In essence, what we do is learning and development, consulting and coaching to help organizations and practitioners, example of practitioners, so product owners, scrum masters, agile architects, that sort of good stuff. Our training portfolio is, well, it's certainly the UK and Europe's actually broadest and deepest, but my gut feel would be it's the world's broadest and deepest specialist agile, Kanban, DevOps, design thinking, innovation, creativity portfolio of training.
First time I've ever been bigger than you, Pete, on that slide. You're usually
I know. What's going on?
Wow.
We're also global. So we've worked with many organisations to deliver worldwide rollouts of this sort of thing. So that finishes today. So our last one we looked at was awesome products and outstanding outcomes in webinar 8. We've just looked a little bit of innovation and creativity, sort of just scratched the surface in that area. Thanks very much to Stuart. Awesome stuff as usual. And then next Wednesday we'll have a look. Wednesday week, August the 5th, we'll have a look at how to be an amazing Scrum Master. So once again, there's our contact details. Feel free to link into us. I'm the only Peter Measy on LinkedIn in the Agile world. So feel free to link into both of us. And as usual, please spread the word on anything that we've talked about. So we're a couple of minutes over. Hopefully you found this very useful. So as usual, Stuart and I will just stay on the webinar just for a minute or two as people disappear. But
thank you very much
for being here. Sorry, Stuart, go on.
No, thank you so much. There's a question, just in case Justin leaves, around is there an icon symbol for Agile, as it means so much? This is a really good point. You could see that we didn't have much time today. This is the beauty of it, is that based on your own experiences, you would draw something different. So if you did want to find a picture that best describes something, if you go to Google and type the word icon, I think you're probably aware of that, Justin, it optimizes the consensus of what people are all thinking, which is kind of good and bad because it doesn't show much diversity. But this is the whole point of this, is that through drawing, there is no one way. So, there is that, Google icon is a great way to do that. But there's something that I talked about before, which is the responsive chord by Tony Schwartz, which says that communication happens when words and pictures resonate with your already inbuilt belief system. So you have a retrospective and you all draw Agile and you see what resonates with you. So there is no one way.
That's a really interesting thing to do, to see what different people draw. So yes, absolutely fantastic. So as I say, we'll just stay on here for a minute or two. Very, very kind comments on chat, by the way. Thanks very much to everybody. Stuart and I certainly enjoy doing these, and it's great that you come along. So we'll just wait a minute or so.
I've been requested to draw what I would draw for Agile.
Oh, good. Then what would you draw for Agile?
Well, I
don't know what I'd draw.
For me, like, do you know what? For me,
a circle, I think, an iterative sort of circular thing. I think.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah.
People, teams, cross-to-cross, peer-to-peer viral change, teams working together iteratively, incrementally.
It's interesting, isn't it? So you and I would come up with something very, very similar, which is probably no great surprise there. But yeah. Anyway, I know people are disappearing now, so let's close out the session. Thanks very much again to everybody for turning up. Great to see you all. Hopefully see you in a few weeks' time, and we'll just end the session there. Thanks very much, Stuart, and good luck, everybody. See you in a few weeks. Cheers. All the best.